my background with the church and stuff was much like, it was very like kind of neo. I can't remember the exact term for it, but like non-denominational kind of like American Christianity. That I don't know. I was the oldest child and kind of just had some crazy stuff, death of a parent and like a step parent that was not my favorite person. And I just didn't have any role models, and MySpace was a thing, and just got sucked into this like horrible self-hating metalcore world for a while. And that it was like, I went from, Ozzy and AC/DC into Bring Me the Horizon and Underoath like really fast in high school, and was just like a total reject.
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 236 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, my guest is the great and powerful Robin Harris of the band Wormwitch out of Canada. They have just put out their self-titled album on Profound Law Records. That record dropped on July the 26th. It is absolutely ripping. I know many of you agree as well, and Robin and I went into detail on the creative direction of the album. We went into detail on the background of the band. We also got into a topic that is very personal to us both. As some of you who listen to the podcast might know, I have my own history of being forced to go to church every Sunday. Robin Harris, turns out, was in a similar boat, and so we've got some pretty interesting perspectives on organized religion and organized Christianity in particular. So we got into that in a lot of detail. It is a great conversation, and it's going to be coming your way in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, we've got us another premiere on the Sphere. This time, the band in question is Ancestor of Kaos out of Havana, Cuba. Turns out there is more to Havana than just communism, great food, and attractive women. Ancestor of Kaos has been around since 2005. They have opened for bands like Deicide, Acheron, and Goat Whore. They've got an album called Animal Ritual being released in 2025, but they chose Into the Necrosphere to be the platform for their first single to be taken from the record. This is a song called Legacy. You just heard Legacy by Ancestor of Kaos out of Havana, Cuba, the premiere on the Sphere this week. And that is taken from the upcoming album entitled Animal Ritual. It'll be out in 2025. Make sure that you keep an eye on their Bandcamp, follow them on the socials. And of course, if you do buy yourself anything or you pre-order the record, then let them know where you heard them the first time. But a big thanks to them for choosing Into the Necrosphere to host their first single off this new record. I absolutely love it. I hope you guys did as well. I've got another premiere coming up next week. I won't give away the name of the band, but I will give you guys a little hint. I have had the frontman of the band on the podcast as a guest twice previously. I actually heard the whole record today, and it is fucking brilliant. So I'm really excited for you guys to hear the song. That will be coming your way next week. And also next week, I am talking to the great Jerry Kurinan, better known as Ruta of Ruta Reviews YouTube channel, an awesome channel, a fucking great dude, and I kind of feel like this was a conversation that was long overdue. I will say brace yourselves because Jerry likes to talk, and you've got 2.5 hours worth of black and other metal chatter coming your way when he's on the show. That's coming your way next week. And of course, if you're new to the podcast and you like what you've heard so far, you like metal talk, you like something that's maybe a tad more sophisticated than the usual Q&A bullshit that you hear on other podcasts, then make sure that you hit the subscribe button, follow the show, follow me on the socials, and if you've not yet done so and the spirit moves you, then leave me a 5-star review on whatever platform you indulge in the podcast in, because all of those things really help the show. I've got a bunch of very exciting things in the pipeline, and I will be announcing those in the coming weeks. Very few things, though, are more exciting than the fact that I am a member of the most elite unit of podcast content creators on the face of the earth. I speak, of course, of the horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. We kick off your week every Monday with another episode of Horror Wolf 666, hosted by the great Brandon Legion. Yours truly casts hexes and slays poses on Into the Necrosphere every Tuesday. Every Wednesday, Mike Hill, Sensei Mike Hill, brings you another episode of Everything Went Black. We double your pleasure every other Wednesday when Cheyenne of the band Trivax releases an episode of Iblis Manifestations. On a Thursday, Sensei Mike Hill returns, and he is joined by his co-hosts, Sheriff Mike Scondado and Professor Jeff Kashid, for another thrilling episode of Necromaniacs, one of my favorite podcasts of the week, and one that I will always listen to no matter what. Also on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, we've got the sinister minister himself, the Reverend Carl Hikara, who takes you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the mysterious, the arcane, and the esoteric on his podcast, Soul Knox. So make sure that you join us in the war against mediocrity, and also make sure that you stick around after my conversation with Robin, because this week on the weekly news rant, I'm getting into new music by the likes of Undeath, Abramelin, Oranssi Pazuzu. There's also the little matter of Michael from Opeth doing death metal vocals again. So we're going to listen to the new Opeth single and decide whether it's worth a damn. Right now, though, sit back and enjoy as I welcome Robin Harris of Wormwitch to Into the Necrosphere. So now that I've hit record, I'm going to repeat the question. What is a woman? No, Robin, welcome to Into the Necrosphere. I will preface the conversation by saying the second that I got to... I actually listened to Draconic Sorceress Canadian Witch Nights on the news rant segment of my podcast first, and that's kind of a segment where I'll read Metal Storm and just whatever is new, I'll listen and I'll kind of give my first impressions. And I fucking loved the song so much. As soon as I was done recording, I immediately dropped Katie a line and said, like, I need to get these dudes on the podcast. Oh, absolutely fucking ripping. But you guys are about 2 weeks away from this album being dropped?
Yeah, something like that. I'm honestly not paying that close attention. But yeah, I think it's coming up.
When did you guys wrap it up? Like, when did the actual recording wrap up?
Oh shit. I think it was fuck, man, I don't know, 6 months ago or more, maybe. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, honestly, I can't really remember. It's sort of a blur. We were in there for like almost we weren't all in there for like a month, but it lasted about a month, and I was in there quite often for a while, and we were just doing like full days. It was crazy.
And is it your own studio? Is it actual studio space that you guys booked out?
Yeah, it's a place called Little Red Sounds in a city called New Westminster, owned by a guy named Michael Crusher, who did some producing and mixed the whole thing and recorded it and everything.
So as soon as I had listened to this, I'd never really gotten very deep into your back catalog. When I heard that track, I immediately went back, listened to all the stuff that you guys had done previously. And it's been quite an interesting progression for me, from Strike Mortal Soil to Wolfex.
Yeah.
There's sort of a gradual increase in intensity. And then with Wormwitch, you guys, it feels to me from the songs I've heard that you really kind of put your foot to the floor. What did that come naturally? What kind of sparked that evolution in the way that you guys sound?
I think that early on, we started out playing in like punk hardcore bands, and it's like a different drummer on the first record, and I think we were just experimenting, trying to figure out what the hell we wanted to do, and also trying to do a lot of stuff at once, and just not really sure where to go. But it's just over time figuring out what we like to play, what feels good to play. And because the band has very much been like a live band since the very beginning, it feels good to feel like I'm firing a machine gun from the stage,
Well, so funny you should mention that, because one of the comments that I made when I was watching the video for that single, it really kind of comes through in the way it sounds. On this record, it sounds like you are assaulting the drum set. It really sounds like you are beating the living fuck out of the drum kit.
Yeah, that's Izzy. He's a big boy, so he hits the drums hard.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely, like I said, it just sounds absolutely fucking nuts. But the kind of with that background in punk crust, you really hear it on this record more than I'd heard it previously. I kind of feel like the mantra maybe was melodies for bitches. When you guys went into the studio on this one, a lot of the melody from all the songs I've heard, and that includes today's single that you guys put out, a lot of it feels very, very stripped back, and it's kind of more simplistic, but in a way, because it's more simplistic, it seems to hit much harder now.
I think that, well, we've discussed this, and we kind of we want to be a band that gets heavier rather than the opposite over time. And so we're like, how can we increase the intensity? And I think it's, partly because it feels good, but also just like realizing what it is that we're like, as we have grown up, our tastes become more like zeroed in. Like I find myself exploring a lot less and just kind of listening to the same shit over and over again. And I just like know what I like now. And I feel like we're all kind of that way. And we also have like started other bands and been able to explore other things, and so that has also like trimmed the fat down, and just like realizing like what kind of the essence of the band is, and like what the energy is, like what's the sort of motivating force behind it all, which is to feel powerful when listening to it and playing it. And I want it to sound like a weapon. It's simple. It's designed to do one thing, and it just does that thing. We didn't necessarily decide that we wanted it to be not melodic. We actually made an effort to be melodic, just without being lame or weak, so just like, how can we like be as aggressive as possible and be melodic? And, often it manifests itself in a kind of chromatic way, but I think there's quite a lot of melodic or emotive sensibilities in the riffs. But,
I would definitely say I can definitely hear the emotive side of things. I can also hear that empowering piece. Like I think that the breakdown, for example, in Draconic Sorceress Canadian Witch Knights. I mean, that really does have that real fist in the air, fuck yes kind of feeling. It's a very male, very testosterone heavy breakdown that. And your vocals coming in over it, you've got a really, I think on this record in particular, you've really dialed into how you want to express yourself, I feel.
Yeah. Yep.
So and on that particular song, and like I said, it's the same on all of the other singles I've heard so far as well. That really comes out.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned you'd been doing other projects. Secret Fire was a project that you were messing around with. Last record was put out you put out an EP in 2021.
Yeah. That's something that I just did by myself. Well, actually, Izzy, who plays drums in Wormwitch, performed drums on that. But yeah, this is one of those things where it's like there's certain kind of stuff that I wanted to do that you had to be able to explore it fully and not have it infiltrate Wormwitch all the time. And realizing that you can just go and do that thing, kind of get it out of your system. So that's a project that I might return to, but on the other hand, like I have stuff flying around for it, but it was mostly just kind of to get something out of the way so we can focus. That's not necessarily like why I did it, but it was just that's part of it, I think.
I mean, given when that came out, you would think that would have been a COVID project, right? And something you did at home when we were all doing nothing.
Yeah, it started before I started working on it long before COVID. I think I started on it maybe in 2018 or something like that, but then it finally kind of came together in its final form, during COVID. And that was also a time where Wormwitch was really dormant, and we couldn't tour. We did Wolfhex and couldn't tour it, and Wolfhex was kind of a record just to get out of the just to kind of finish our contract, honestly.
Really?
And it was something that we wanted to do, but it was very loose and just sort of like, fuck it. And so we kicked that out of there, and just there was stuff that I wanted to do for a long time, and it manifested in another band as well called Henbane Chariot that I played drums in with a friend of mine. And Colby, who plays guitar, went off and did a couple bands during that period, and I'm not sure if Izzy recorded anything, but we all kind of went off and did a bunch of stuff while Wormwitch was just kind of sleeping. And then we reconvened, and basically from that point on, I think if you look at the singles and the EPs and stuff for Wormwitch, there was a sort of marked shift in focus and how we wanted to approach the band, and suddenly it becomes a lot more intense and direct and relentless and fast, just continuous tempos and the stuff. We just sort of zeroed in on what exactly it was after being able to sort of clear out the cruft that was in the way.
Well, I was listening to the old Beast Law, in anticipation of having this conversation, and it kind of struck me that some of the, not necessarily, I mean, there's some musical similarities, but some of the spirit, some of the intensity of the tracks on there, particularly the title track, I almost felt like I could hear a little bit of that in the new material. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but there feels like there's a bit of overhang there.
I think that's probably true. I think maybe a part of the effect of working on that was the first record that I made myself. And so maybe there was for me personally, kind of coming into my identity or what exactly it is that I bring to Wormwitch. What is it that I'm capable of doing by myself if I'm writing everything? And I definitely, in the past, Colby and I have have shared writing duties pretty squarely. But he would write most of the guitars, and then we would kind of just sit down together and sort of construct things, and I would give my input. But I wasn't really able to pick up. I've played guitar since I was 15 years old, but I never really, I don't know, I never played guitar in the band or did any sort of direct guitar playing for writing. And it was after that point that I felt I was able to contribute more. So maybe there's just more of my guitar playing in the stuff now that contributes to that.
What made you pick up a guitar when you were 15?
I don't really know exactly. I always have been kind of interested in music. Like, I was listening to a lot of like Christian hard rock when I was 15, and like metalcore and stuff like that.
I was about to say like what sort of Christian hard rock?
Like when I was a kid, I was listening to. There's a band called Pillar. I'm trying to think of other bands that and like POD.
POD said.
Yeah.
So I asked this question because I grew up in and I've very storied on this podcast, but I grew up in very religious household.
Yeah,
I got dragged to church every Sunday morning and Sunday night, and so I was around some of that shit. People trying to present mortification to me as a healthy alternative to deicide, and I'm trying to think some of the crap that people try to get me or try to give me to wean me off the stuff I was listening to. I think the band is called Newsboys.
Oh,
they did I don't care if they call me a Jesus freak.
Oh yeah, I remember
it was like a punk song. Yeah, absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, that's dredging up old memories. I completely forgot about that band. My dad loved that band. He might still love them. But I mean, I also loved AC/DC as a kid and Ozzy, and that was AC/DC was huge for me when I was a kid.
But who was your first band? Because AC/DC was mine.
First band? I mean, honestly, I was listening to Christian music first. That's the first thing I really remember. It was like Switchfoot and DC Talk, I remember, and Newsboys.
DC Talk, I remember as well.
Yeah.
And Skillet was the other big one.
Oh, yeah.
Skillet, I know, is still going because you see them crop up on Blabbermouth every so often.
Oh, shit. I didn't know they're still a band. But I listened to that band. And then as I got older, I was always drawn to guitar music. And I was listening to, it was 2006 or like 2005. I was listening to like Undeath and stuff like that in high school. And it wasn't until after high school I got into kind of crust and hardcore punk and stuff like that. Kind of through that, I got really heavily involved with the Vancouver hardcore scene. I was in like a melodic hardcore band, and then in a kind of crusty, blackened, I don't know, hardcore band that I actually started with Colby, who we then went on to do Wormwitch after that. We were just like, I want to make a band about fucking dragons and not whatever hardcore is about.
Yeah.
My feelings. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny. There's so many people I've been speaking to recently that share our background. I spoke to SB from Antichrist Siege Machine. Same deal.
Oh, yeah.
The background was, I think, possibly slightly closer towards the Heaven's Gate cult than maybe how I grew up. But mine was pretty strict. I quite clearly remember one evening when I was ordered to burn every single poster in my room, and then the very next week new posters would go up. But I never had the Christian rock phase. I could never get into it. It was I heard AC/DC, and then that set me down a path. And anyone who tried to present me anything else, it always just sounded. I would read what they say in magazines about the devil having the best tunes, and I was like, yeah, no. I'm still wrestling with it in my mind because you're a bit brainwashed from being exposed to the religion every single Sunday. but it was like I knew in my heart the devil did have the best tunes.
Yeah, I experienced something similar. My background with the church and stuff was much like, it was very like kind of neo. I can't remember the exact term for it, but like non-denominational kind of like American Christianity. That I don't know. I was the oldest child and kind of just had some crazy stuff, death of a parent and like a step parent that was not my favorite person. And I just didn't have any role models, and MySpace was a thing, and just got sucked into this like horrible self-hating metalcore world for a while. And that it was like, I went from, Ozzy and AC/DC into Bring Me the Horizon and Under Oath, like really fast in high school, and was just like a total reject for a while. But found my way back to the devil at the time.
So let me ask you, the Christianity thing, was that something that you discovered yourself
No, it was
of the circumstances, or was that's imposed by your family, your parents, where you were growing up?
No, my dad was a pastor's kid, and my mom was Christian as well, and they were. I don't know. I didn't really have any really bad experiences with it early on. I think maybe it was the particular kind of Christianity that was quite kind of open. I had a lot of good friends. My mom just had shitloads of friends, and I just was surrounded by great people all the time. So I was a part of the church for a while. I was like involved with youth group and stuff. I even was like a camp counselor at like a Christian summer camp for a while when I was in high school and stuff. So I was pretty involved and didn't have a lot of bad experiences. It wasn't until later, when things were kind of going sideways for me, that I really started struggling with it. And I was like, feels like I'm having to, this is getting kind of like deep now, but I felt like I was like fighting just to have a normal life. And I was like, I can't give this credit to anyone else. I need to claim some like credit for myself to like take control of my life. I can't like give this away to someone. Because basically it's just been a shit show since I was 11. So like from that point on, I kind of, in wresting control of my life, I kind of left the church at the same time. And it was kind of up and down throughout high school. And so I started out, it was very positive, and then it kind of turned south very internally. There wasn't like a particular, it was more like metaphysical than like an experience that I had. It was just like, this doesn't make any fucking sense to me kind of thing. Eventually,
I had that. It felt like I had that all of my life, right? I had as I said, grew up literally from birth. Sunday morning and Sunday night, you're in church, and I recall just from a very young age, just never feeling like I fit in. I used to be, incredibly bored during sermons. So at a very young age, I read the Bible cover to cover. I've read the Bible cover to cover multiple times. At the age of 8 and 9, you don't really quite understand some of what's going on there. Like when I used to read about, David having to cut the foreskins of the Philistines and present it to King Saul to marry his daughter. I was like, why is he cutting the skin off their foreheads? What the fuck's going on here? So, it was like there was some confusing shit. It's quite a violent book. But I just never felt like I fit in. I remember we used to have at church, you would have on a Sunday morning, right before the main sermon starts, people would have an opportunity to give their testimony about what God has done for them in the week. And I remember this one lady, would always be one of the first to stand up. And she stood up the one day and said, we were going to go to the supermarket and I couldn't find my car keys. And then next thing I knew, my 5-year-old daughter prayed and there my keys were. It's like, and I always used to think, even at that age, I was like, this is so fucking stupid. Like, why do you fall for this crap? And then, I still considered myself, a believer. I knew I didn't fit in with that gang. I thought maybe at some point I'll find my own people. But then it was a series of things that just kind of eventually made me decide, it was one actually, funny enough, watching Bill Maher's documentary Religulous, and I was like, actually, he's probably nailed almost every single thing I think. This is crap. There was a few other things. One in particular was, I can't remember what the documentary was that I saw. It wasn't even about religion. It was just a guy talking about the danger of religion being, and it maybe ties into something that you just said a second ago. It takes your focus away from what's immediately in front of you, or what immediately should be a priority, because people constantly live with this idea that there's a better life waiting for me. So it doesn't matter how much I fuck my own life up down here on earth, because as soon as I'm dead, I'm going to heaven. I also, a couple of things that I wrestled with as a young man, and maybe you can relate to this. I could never understand the idea of predestination. Never made any sense to me. There's a God of love, but if you're a baby and you die, then you're straight to hell because you never gave your life to the Lord. And then the other thing was the concept of heaven as it was presented in the Bible. Like, you won't recognize any of your loved ones and you'll spend all your time praising God. That just sounded boring as fuck to me.
I remember that.
I was like, I can't. Yeah. I don't want to sit around singing hymns and playing the harp all day.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like, oh man, there's a lot there, but
a lot there is in Jackie. I think you should go and see a psychiatrist.
No. Just I'm trying to remember or figure out what to. I relate in lots of ways, especially with heaven and stuff. I think that like now I have like an interest in like sort of the origins of religion and magic and stuff like that, and philosophy and just human history in general. And now when I look at the Bible, I'm like, oh, this is like a magical text. And a lot of this stuff is like weird, like layovers from like Canaanite, like primitive rituals, and there's a lot of like occulted symbolism and stuff. And like, it's funny because some of the stuff that I was struggling with as a teenager was just like taking the Bible really literally and being like, this is impossible, and didn't have like a mind at all for understanding that like, oh, this is like, I don't know, it has something, it's more like sympathetic magic or symbolic for something else that's happening than anything else. And so, maybe there's value in it there as just like an ancient text that like contains some like pragmatic wisdom that was maybe at one point applicable and made more sense, but often it's taken out of context now. And like so many things, we forget why this thing came to be, and then suddenly it's divorced from like its original purpose and becomes sort of meaningless gibberish. And yeah, then you get all kinds of things like people taking the Bible really literally, and like the way people even perceive of heaven. I've actually heard some interesting like conceptions for that like heaven and hell are the same place, but it's just a matter of whether or not you love God, and you will either experience it as great bliss or suffering, depending on that and stuff like that's not necessarily this Dante's Inferno place. And I don't know. It's funny how all these things just, I don't know, over time change, and a lot of it's like cultural and I don't know, what is it really? I don't know.
Well, there were also the cranks in our church that I think they used to treat heaven, because they would openly speak this way, but they used to treat the concept of heaven like effectively what would happen if they win the lottery. So it'd be like, oh, when I get to heaven, I'm going to have this car, I'm going to have this house. It's like this isn't the lottery, you fucking nitwit. And basically if you'd read the Bible, the love of money is meant to be a grave mortal sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know what? That reminds me something that I really came to recognize and despise was sort of death denial. The death denial aspect that I think is like kind of a bigger problem. I think it like sort of comes from a Christian mindset that is sort of pervasive in the West. But this like focus on immortality of some kind, or be it metaphysical immortality or whatever. But just this, like, even just the way that we like treat our dead now, like we just don't want to see it. We can't, it's now like illegal to even deal with your own dead. You have to call the, whatever you call them.
The coroner?
The coroner.
Yeah.
You have to, you can't do it yourself. Like, whereas before, that was what you did. Your family died in your house and you have to go through that and deal with that. And like, this is like it's very integrated. Like death is like very integrated. And it's actually a common theme in a lot of the Wormwitch stuff, is like marrying death and life together, and like pain and triumph together, and stuff like that, and how all these things are necessary and right. Like death is like right. Like it's this like most natural thing, and yet we put so much energy into like avoiding it or denying it. It's like, of course we want to live and survive, but there's just like, there's a way to live where you're like so afraid of death that you can get to this point where suddenly your life doesn't matter anymore, because there's like a better, more perfect, more pure place that's waiting for you. And I find it kind of sad. And yeah, there's a difference in the quality of life when you understand that death is like this normal thing that should be integrated into society more. And I think that that's honestly also something that I came to appreciate via metal and stuff like that, because it's such a common theme that's sort of taboo. And also the death of my mother when I was 11 kind of threw me for a loop, and that's, kind of how I ended up here. But like death has been very present in my life, and I feel like a great way to explore that has been via music, and it's just a place where people like aren't afraid to talk about that kind of thing. And whereas like in Christian circles that I was really part of, you just don't really talk about that. It's like kind of a nasty thing. It's dark or whatever, and it's like, no, it's not. It's like fucking normal.
Well, I feel very strongly that contemplating the concept of death, as I think you've just suggested now, I think it makes you appreciate life that much more intensely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you realize that life is finite. And I constantly tell this to my daughter. I'll say to her, if you make sure that you tell your grandmother that you love her, that you appreciate her. I said, because it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year, but she's of the age now where very often you're going to get a call and she's going to have died in her sleep of something. I think it's very important for people to, from a young age, frankly, understand that today, something could happen today unexpectedly that ends, that snuffs all of this out. And what you never ever want to be left with is regrets. Same as how I think making these changes in my life has affected relationships. And as I've grown older, I've probably become more kind of single-minded in my thinking around this. I'll often say to my fiance, like, I'm not somebody who likes these couples that spend their time bickering and shouting and arguing. I said, imagine if you're the kind of if we parted ways after having a stand-up row for in the morning. I get into the car, get onto the highway, get into a car accident, I'm dead. Would I genuinely want the last memory you have of me to be us arguing about all sorts of bullshit?
Yeah.
And I feel like not enough people think that way, and I think that's why they live their lives focused on a lot of very trivial things and getting incredibly angry and worked up and investing a huge amount of energy in things that are, in the grand scheme of things, completely and utterly mundane and pointless.
Yeah, you know what? I feel like death acceptance is almost kind of also just like, it can translate also to like inconvenience acceptance and stuff. Like I find that I sit in a line up differently after maturing basically and doing essentially exactly what you said. Like I went through a period where I was just thinking about death all the time. It's like, finally I'm an adult, I'm on my own, and no Christianity anymore. No, so like now there's this big question of like, what is it to exist? And started thinking about death a lot. And I started just being like, I could die today, basically every day. And I'd be like walking to work and I'd be like, I could not look correctly and get hit by a car right now. And it was just this like ever present thing in my mind. It made it so that like when I kind of just became like more content to be alive as a result. And at the same time, less like just taking being alive for granted. And that completely changes the way that you live and treat people. And absolutely.
Well, I will say, if there's anything that I've taken with me from religion, the one thing that I do make a point of doing in the morning, I wake up early. So I wake up about 45 minutes before I need to get out of bed. I get myself a coffee, get into bed. I'll, read some news or whatever I feel like doing. And then I will make sure I spend a bit of time. And I wouldn't even call it meditation, but what I do is I spend some time thinking about the fact that I'm healthy. All my faculties work. Mm-hmm. I've got a roof over my head. I've got food over my food on my table. I've got a good job. I've got a great fiance. I've had the opportunity to do just about everything I ever dreamed of doing. When I was a kid growing up in South Africa, and actually even just contemplating the fact that you're healthy and that you've got a functioning brain and that you can walk and that you can hear, you can see, you can speak. Even that, to me alone, I kind of remind myself constantly, like you have won the fucking genetic lottery here, because there's so many people that never have had that option. So that's one thing, and and I say I took that with me from religion, because you were taught when you were young to count your blessings. I'm sure you would do. So I really do quite literally count my blessings, every morning, because I personally think that keeps you grounded and that keeps you humble as well. I don't think it's a religious thing. But I think you should remind yourself of the fact that you are incredibly fortunate to be in the position that you're in.
Yeah, I do think that I don't know if I might have inherited some things like that from religion. I feel like I had to figure a lot of that stuff out myself somehow. Like nothing I really learned there stuck very much. I mean, I've always felt fortunate because I've been surrounded by very supportive people, and most of them were from the church. Like when my mom died, we were massively supported by the church, like meals every day. Like my dad was working all the time, and it was just like, so I definitely learned to be appreciative of people and how important like community is. And I definitely think that like stuff like that, the sort of like almost ritualistic like rhythms of a religious life, there's a reason why these things exist, and why they became dogmatic or whatever. Like maybe at some point they become dogmatic, but I don't know, we're cyclical creatures, and like having these kinds of rhythms of like whatever, meditating in gratitude about your health and your life or whatever, it's just good for you. And so when it's like, I guess, institutionalized in a religion or something like that, like these things are much older than even religion, that we brought them with us from our hunter-gatherer past, like it's just like a necessary part of life. And I find that in the modern age, where we're so cynical and stuff like that, and there is a lot of justified I guess animosity towards religion, we can very quickly throw the baby out with the bathwater when we just like live in complete anarchy and chaos and like don't acknowledge these things and live completely based on our whims and like just want to do whatever we want. And I'm not like this super hyper disciplined person. I stay up till like 4 a.m. every night working on Dungeons and Dragons shit, and I wake up when I want. And I'm self-employed for a reason, so that I can live that way. But like also, I think it's great to understand that like there are certain things that are just good for you, and it has nothing to do with Christianity or religion. If you hate that, it's like it's monkey shit, or post monkey shit. I don't know. So,
well,
ranting over.
I see what you're driving at, because I also believe, and actually, funnily enough, Mortis of Marduk mentioned this in an interview with Bardo. When you remove religion from society, you create a vacuum, and in our current society, that's been filled with all kinds of garbage.
Oh yeah,
because there's no question that religion has taken a back seat. I think folks like you and I that had to kind of discover this. As a side note, I think very few people realize how intensely difficult it is for you to get out of religion if it's something that you grew up with. It's extraordinarily difficult. You have so many arguments with yourself, so many things that you have to justify in your own mind. I mean, I don't know whether you had this, but having to justify why it's okay for me to listen to Deicide. Regardless of what they're singing, you do some serious mental gymnastics there. It's like, well, the Lord blessed them with the ability to play the guitar. That's not the devil's works. So how can this be truly Satan inspired? But it's like, I think when you remove religion, you fill it with all sorts of trash, and that's definitely what we see in society. And I would say as a net outcome, I don't think the net outcome necessarily is better. Religion has a lot of problems and a lot of flaws, but what it's been replaced with, in my view, is far more destructive.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I think one of those things is stuff like community and just not mindless self-indulgence. There was a sense of like a greater thing that we're all kind of working towards and stuff like that. When I mean, for so long it was the kind of foundation of society. It was the thing upon which we could all kind of agree. And you go back a couple hundred years, and it's basically not contested. Everyone is just like, there's no reason to really question it. It's like, this is just the way it is. And there's all kinds of problems that come with that too. But so that was just the way it was. Like, it's history. But I was going to say something else, but I lost my train of thought. That happens to me often. Well,
you made a pretty bold move, because I remember you posted about this on the socials, and I do some research before an interview. Back in 2021, made the decision to become self-employed, go your own way, pursue art as a vocation.
Yeah.
How much of your kind of change, because again, that's a very brave thing to do, and it would have been particularly brave to do, particularly at that time. How much of that came from your change in your view of the world and your view of life versus just being a entrepreneur at heart?
Definitely not I don't know. I wouldn't use the term entrepreneur. I'm kind of just I don't know. I've always done that. Like when I was 17, I ran away from home because I was just like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. So I ran away and ended up living with a friend's parents for a while and just kind of floated around and started playing in bands. And then it was like, do you want to go on tour? And I was like, that sounds cool. I want to do that. Let's do it. So we borrow our friend's mom's van and drive to Saskatchewan, and just start doing it. And then, I didn't really have a relationship with my parents at that time anymore. So I was kind of just out there as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, trying to, I don't know. I couldn't really hold down a job for some reason. I just really struggled to make myself do that. And I was always just thinking about stuff I wanted to make and stuff I wanted to do. And maybe there's something to do with feeling like, first off, my mom died when I was really young and in an accident. And so it was very sudden and not expected at all. And then being kind of trapped in a not ideal home life situation very shortly after that, escaping that and just feeling like so grateful to be able to do what I want. And not being able to kind of go back to feeling like a prisoner. And I just kept quitting jobs to go on tour. And at one point my dad was like, when are you gonna stop doing this? And I was like, never. Like, this is what I want to do, and doing it, and it's cool. I'm meeting people all the time. I'm having these experiences, and now I long time ago repaired a relationship with my dad, and he gets it now. He's like, I'm like, I've seen basically every state. I've been all across Canada. I've got friends all over. I have had all these kind of experiences, and it's just like, I don't know, I wouldn't trade that for anything. So when it came to, I knew I wasn't going to be able to hack it out in any other kind of job, really. Like, I worked for my dad's company doing some like industrial cleaning, and I worked at a pub for a while that was awesome in Vancouver called the Moose, and just happened to have a really great boss, a chef, and that just kind of understood me and like let me go on tour, and because it was like a rock and roll bar, so they just understood, but eventually, I kept having to go to work in the middle of working on something that I actually cared about, and I would just feel so frustrated. And I was working alone at night. Like, I worked night shift. Most of my jobs have been night shifts because they were the only jobs that I could get that would let me go on tour and stuff like that. And if I quit, I could just find another night shift job easy because no one wanted these jobs. You could just pick them up basically. So I've always just been kind of nocturnal, so it worked out. But yes, it was just one day I was like, I at some point kind of decided that I was going to pursue drawing. It was something that I kind of always did since I was a kid, just sort of for fun. And when I picked it up seriously again as an adult, I just was building towards this, and with the intent of like, okay, well, like, I know exactly what I could do art for. It would be for bands and shit. I know all these people. I know exactly what, now that I have this kind of experience being in a band and touring and stuff, I know more or less what people want. I know how to get in contact with those people. I'm not afraid of them anymore because I know that they're just normal people. There's very little barrier between me and that. And so, one day I just realized that my job was getting in the way of this, and told my dad that I'm just going to draw now. I started getting commissions. There's this band called One of Nine. Well, actually, they were called Worsen at the time, but One of Nine, black metal band. And I did my first commission for them. It was like a drawing of the Witch King. And I was like, oh shit, I can get paid doing this. If I didn't have a job, I had some savings, and I was like, I could just stop working and maybe I'll lose some money for a while, but like, I'm sure it would pick up, and I would have all this extra time. I wouldn't be getting interrupted like mid, like when the ball's rolling, constantly. And so long way to say it. But,
and so the focus is just on like band logos, album covers, and stuff like that now. Are you doing other stuff?
No band logos or anything. I think that's a whole discipline, and I'm no good at it.
I'm sure I saw on Facebook somewhere you did a logo for somebody, though.
I might have. I mean, I've done a couple, maybe. Like I did one back in the day that I remember, but I've never been any good at them. I stick to just kind of illustrating. Yeah. But no, I'm mostly for bands and stuff, but also for role-playing games, like old school role-playing games. That's a big thing that I'm kind of obsessed with. So there's a really awesome, it's honestly really similar to underground metal in that there's this extremely dedicated, fanatical DIY scene full of amateur illustrators and designers and people just making their own shit and putting it out and stuff within the role-playing games, and even has like very similar aesthetics. And there's shitloads of crossover, honestly. Like, you look at early Burzum album covers and it's like a D&D module, literally. like just copied.
No. We don't talk about Burzum on the show because I'm a very sensitive person and very correct.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I'm fucking around. I was going to ask you though, because I've looked at some of your art on Instagram, and it's very good. You'd never contemplated going down the tattoo road or getting into the tattoo game, because some of your artwork kind of veers towards certainly what I've seen my other friends that are tattoo artists do.
Yeah, my sister is a tattooer. Colby, my best buddy, guitar player in Wormwitch, his wife is a tattooer. My girlfriend is a tattooer. I'm just surrounded by it, and I have definitely thought about it, but at the same time, it's kind of limiting in certain ways. You have to consider the tattoo and how it's going to age and all this stuff. And I think I prefer the kind of indulgent nature of just illustrating, where all I'm worried about is the medium that I'm working with. I'm not worried about how it's going to age. And I'm just kind of introverted, and it's much more like me in my benighted tower in the starry vaults, listening to dungeon synth and black metal and drawing by myself. That's like the place that I like to be. So being in a tattoo studio, like I spend a considerable amount of time hanging out in tattoo studios, just because so many close friends and stuff working in them. It's great. It's nice to be in that environment, working with people and stuff like that. But I think I'm just more focused on, I want to get more into like painting, and there's all kinds of other mediums that I'm exploring and stuff. So yeah, like maybe one day we'll see, but it's not really a focus.
I think also the thing with tattooing is unless you are at a certain level, you're also going to have to put up with all the people that want, only God can judge me tattooed across the forehead, or the Jacoby Shaddix teardrop from the eye and shit like that. I would imagine as an artist that would be completely and utterly soul destroying.
It definitely depends on what kind of shop you work at. Like, I know a lot of people that work in private shops, and you almost can't even call it a shop. It's just like a room where you work directly with people that are coming to you to specifically get something that you do or pick up some flash that you did. If you work on like a street level shop with walk-ins, yeah, maybe. And nothing wrong with that. But I think one main thing is that like drawing and painting are crafts, and tattooing is its own craft. And it comes with a lot of dedication on its own. Like, even if you don't draw, and there's plenty of tattooers that just don't even draw at all. Maybe they do stencils or whatever. You don't have to draw to be a great dedicated tattooer, and that's a whole career by itself. So like, if I were to take on tattooing in addition to drawing and painting and music and stuff, it's like taking on a whole other career basically, even though it's like tangentially related with illustration, and many tattooers are illustrators. I do think that they're like two separate disciplines that marry together really well. But yeah, it's like, if you're going to tattoo, like I said, if you work in a private studio, and many, like, I feel like based on my following that I've managed to develop, and just I guess a certain aesthetic that I've have a bit of command over, I would be able to probably avoid doing like script tattoos and teardrop tattoos and stuff like that, because I can't imagine myself working in a street level walk-in shop. It's just like so not the way that I work.
No.
So yeah.
Where did you get your tattoos from, out of interest?
Honestly, most of them are from women in my life. My sister, my girlfriend.
I thought you were about to say prison.
Yeah. Yeah, most of them are from prison.
Yeah.
No, like pretty much this whole arm is my sister. This is my girlfriend. This is my girlfriend. this one. And yeah, I've got some others from friends and stuff like that, or just like I've been fortunate enough to trade like prints or stuff with tattooers that I like and get a tattoo in exchange. I haven't spent very much money on tattoos. I'm just surrounded by tattooers, and early on my sister was experimenting on me, and I wanted some tattoos, so I was down. And
yeah. No, I was very deliberate in my strategy when it came to tattoos. 2 artists, one on each arm, and both of them had exactly the same brief. Do whatever you want. I'd seen stuff that they'd done. It was the 2 guys that did it were 2 former apprentices of Paul Booth. One is the Orsifer, the other is a guy named Dan Marshall. And I showed them 1 or 2 things that I liked, but they just did whatever they wanted. And I whenever anyone asks me, oh, what tattoo should I get? I'm like, don't get anything. Decide on an artist whose work you really like, and just tell them to do whatever they feel inspired to do. Because I truly believe, I would argue, particularly the one that Emily Orsifer gave me. I think, he and I have become quite good friends since. I feel like he expressed something about my personality in that piece of art that he did for me that no one on earth would ever have been able to capture the way that he did. Like that, that's to me is like that's his perception of me in tattoo form. And he actually said the same thing when I asked him about it years later. He's like, yeah, so that's why we were talking for about 2.5 hours before I started working on you, before I even had an idea, because I was just kind of getting to know you. We hit it off. And I think that's partly why we became friends. It's just this, we just had this bond, both of us into black metal, both of us view life probably in quite a similar way. But I think what also helps there is I've never once in my entire life looked at myself in the mirror, like, when I'm doing the morning gun flex, like, thank God I look this good. Yeah, I've never once looked at the tattoos and gone, Jesus, man, what were you thinking? So yeah, that's just a side note on tattoos. But you mentioned earlier about playing with different bands and stuff with Wormwitch. I mean, you guys have toured with some fucking serious heavyweights, including, in my view, one of the elite of the elite, Mayhem. For you personally, was there a point? You guys haven't played with Mayhem?
No, I don't think so. I feel like I remember that. I was
misinformed. So, well, I take that back then. But here's the question: was there ever a point where you were playing with a band, or you were on a bill with a band, on tour with a band, where you kind of had to pinch yourself and go, "I'm playing with band X"?
Well, kind of. I mean, when our first big tour was with Suffocation and the Black Dahlia Murder, and
Suffocation is big enough. I mean, was this Frank Mullen Suffocation?
I don't think he was in the band at the time. That's the vocalist, right?
Was it? Yeah, Frank Mullen was the vocalist.
Yeah. No, he wasn't.
I forget his surname, but his name is Ricky.
Yeah. No. They had a fill-in, and we were actually got to be buddies on the tour, and I can't remember his name right now. So
Ricky Myers is his name. And I was about to say he's hard as fuck. So watch your back.
Yeah. No. It was a young guy, played in. Like a sort of almost slam band from New York.
Yeah, Disgorge.
I don't remember his name. No, different band.
Oh, really?
He was only on with them for a few tours. Maybe did he even record an album with them? I can't recall.
He wouldn't have done, because I think because Frank did all of he did all the albums with the exception of the new one.
I'd have to look it up. I regret that I forget his name because he's a great guy. But that's just my.
I'm tagging them in this.
My Swiss cheese brain here.
That's going to be the way that I describe this episode. Robin forgets disrespectfully forgets the name of the Suffocation stand-in vocalist he went on tour with.
Yeah. Go for it. Crucify me. Let's. But no. Yeah, so I went on. We went on tour with Suffocation and the Black Dahlia Murder, and Necrot was on that tour, and another band that I can't remember, but it was a big ass long tour. It was like a month and a half long. It was the first real tour that we'd ever done. It was all over the States, going to a bunch of places for the first time, and it definitely felt surreal. And it was very existential, kind of. And there was all kinds of stuff going on with the band at that time. This was pre-Heaven That Dwells Within, so we were touring Strike Mortal Soil. And it was like realizing that I don't really like what we're playing, or I'm not super into it. And then we're surrounded by all these heavy-hitting bands and mixtures of like lots of fragile ego stuff happening. And just, it was almost hard to appreciate, learn shitloads. But I don't know. I think very quickly I realized that like all these people are just guys playing music, and you would think that I might feel starstruck or something, but I never really have. The only guy that I've ever felt starstruck meeting was Matt Pike. That was recently. Oh, yeah? I shook Matt Pike's hand at a High and Fire show.
I had him on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. It was, I even said it before the episode started. I was like, "You're just gonna have to forgive me. This is a total fan interview." I asked him every question I wanted to ask him as a fan. Yeah. We barely spoke about the new album. We touched on it a little bit, but the whole angle I took was I want to hear the stories behind some of the most, my favorite High on Fire songs. And then the most insane thing about it was most of the songs were about friends of his that have passed away. So it's like, oh shit, Jesus Christ, I kind of feel like it's this, you're throwing the dice on every song, and it's like, okay, first song, he says it's about my best friend that passed away. Okay, hopefully we steer away from this negative shit. Yeah. Next one, oh, that's for another, brother of mine that died. It's like, oh, for fuck's sake. But he was such a nice guy, and. Yeah, I'm just guessing by your smile, you probably feel the same way about him that I do, which is, to me, that guy is one of the best of the best. His music just flows from his every pore. Yeah, he's just kind of like he's a guitar god. Yes. It's like shaking Jimi Hendrix's hand almost. I basically just like came up to him while he was putting his guitar away and punished him for 3 seconds. I was like, "Hey man, sorry, know you got stuff to do," but I was fucking hammered. And I was just like, "I just love your band, and I just wanted to shake your hand." So here's a question for you. What's your favorite High on Fire song?
I mean, the album that I've listened to the most is Snakes for the Divine. That's the only... I'm honestly mostly a Sleep fan, honestly.
Oh, really?
That's like kind of my Matt Pike experience.
Well, where I feel like I went up in his estimation a little bit is I said to him, my favorite song by miles is a song called Ethereal that was on Death Is This Communion. I would strongly recommend you check out that album if you haven't done yet. But he even sung a bar on the interview. Oh, shit. The chorus is like, "I walk the open steps to answer abyss whose voice leads me onward." He even did very briefly in passing, but as far as I'm concerned, I still got Matt Pike to sing on the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is the fucking man. Everything he does is just brilliant. Like, he doesn't write a shit song. All of his lyrics are awesome. Was he cordial, nice to you?
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, I mean, I was drunk as hell and came up to him and I was like, "Actually, I love the stuff you do, and I actually play in a band. Because I'm in France right now, and I was like, I play in a band from Canada. And we just happened to be here and saw High Fire was here. We drove like an hour and a half to go see them from Paris out in Amiens. I can't remember where it was, but yeah, and he was like, "Oh, from Canada, right on, man." And I was like, "Yeah." Anyway, I was just, shook his hand though.
Yeah, no, dude, I don't blame you. I've very rarely been starstruck. I was very excited to have Attila from Mayhem on the podcast. I was very excited to have Gol from Gorgoroth on the podcast, or former. In my view, let's be honest, Gorgoroth to me doesn't exist without Gol. So, but Matt Pike was probably amongst the happiest experiences I've ever had on the show, because it was just like, to me, meeting this dude, like you were saying about Jimi Hendrix, if Jimi Hendrix were to be resurrected and Matt Pike would be there and they go, who do you want to hang out with for the night? I wouldn't even ask. No questions asked. No two ways about it. I would hang out with Matt Pike straight away.
Oh, hell yeah.
If you get him talking about fucking space aliens and philosophy and stuff, you'll be busy for the night. But brother, I want to say thank you very much for your time. This was such a fun conversation, and like I said, it's a crazy thing how many people I've been meeting recently who kind of share that religious church background, and I think all of us can relate to certain things that we all went through or we all experienced during that time. And I always felt like I was quite alone in that regard, but it's nice to know that I wasn't the only one.
Totally, man. Yeah, it was great.
I could tell you stories about chasing the skirts of the girls from the reform school that used to come to our church, but that's a different story altogether. But man, congratulations on this new album.
Thank you.
Because I will definitely say this as kind of a closing comment. If ever there's the sound of a band that's really finding its form, and like they talk about a fighter hitting their stride, maybe those first 2-3 fights, they're still feeling out what their style is in the cage. Because again, no fighting aside from MMA do I consider real fighting. So they're still feeling their style out in the cage. This is the album that to me is like where you guys hit your prime. It's fucking brilliant.
There's a reason it's self-titled, honestly. Yeah, and that's the reason. It's because we feel the same way, and we had that realization going into it. We kind of knew what we wanted to do, and you can tell in the interim between Wolfhex and this album, with the experimenting with the split and some singles and stuff, that we were just kind of trying the formula. And then we were like, I think we understand this. Let's just execute. And it's kind of like, I would consider this the first real album from this band. That's how I feel about it. So
I love it. I love that confidence. Well, dude, I hope I get to run into you in person at some point. I'm going to get drunk and run up to you and go, I really like what you do, Rob. Hopefully we see each other face to face at some point. But regardless, well done on the record, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure.
Cool. Take care. You just listened to a track called Draconic Sorceress Canadian Witch Nights. The band, of course, is Wormwitch, taken from their self-titled album released on July the 26th via Profound Law Records. And I want to say a big thank you to Robin Harris for his time. Also a big thank you to him for being willing to talk so openly and so honestly about some of his experiences. And like I mentioned to him, it really feels like this is a topic that's come up more frequently in recent times on the podcast. If you go back to the conversation that I had with SB of Antichrist Siege Machine, we covered it as well. And always interesting to talk to people who went through the same thing. You kind of feel like you're man alone in this scene, and the reality is that you're not. And I think it's especially true of folks in Canada and in the States. But great to talk to Robin. That Wormwitch album, I highly recommend if you haven't heard it yet. And I will, of course, post the link to the record or to the band's Bandcamp in the description to the podcast. So head over there, buy yourself some music, and let them know who sent you when you do. I did mention my interview with SB of Antichrist Siege Machine, and let me just say, probably silly to even have to mention this, but if you're new to the podcast and you don't know yet, do yourself a favor and check out the archives. This year alone, I have been so fortunate with the guests that I've been able to have on the podcast. I've had on the folks from Gehenna. I've had Sakis from Rotten Christ. I've had the Werewolves lads last week. Fucking great episode. I've had David Vincent. I've had, Silinos from Dimmu Borgir. I've had DG from Mysterium. So when I scroll over the guests that have been on in 2024, I'm blown away, and I'm hoping that you guys are going to be blown away by it too. So if you're new to the podcast, do remember there is an awful lot of good shit in the archives that you may not have checked out yet, and you should do yourself a favor and give it a listen. A couple of other things that you need to do yourself a favor and listen to. Carnophage put out Matter of a Darker Nature this past weekend. Fantastic death metal record. The band, of course, from Turkey. The album, I believe, is available on Transcending Obscurity Records. A album that we listened to the advanced singles, I think all three or two advanced singles on the news rant. I loved it. The record doesn't disappoint. Another album I would certainly suggest you take notice of. Diocletian have put out their new record, Inexorable Nexus, fresh off of touring the UK with Cheyenne and the lads over in Trivax, and of course making many snowflakes weep. It's probably, in my view, one of their best records to date, so make sure you check that one out. The new Forgotten Tomb, Night Floating, I think may very well be the best thing they've put out since their debut record. But then the album that has really attracted my attention, and this was another one that we picked up on the news rant. I loved it when I heard it there. The whole thing is even better than the singles would suggest. The band, of course, is Horned Almighty, and their new album, Contagion Zero, is available right now on Soul Seller Records. I'm going to play you one of my favorite songs off that album right now. This is Ascension of Fever and Plague. That was Horned Almighty with a song called Ascension of Fever and Plague. It's off their brand new album, Contagion Zero, available now on Soulseller Records. Essential listening if you consider yourself a full-blooded member of the Legion. Link to their Bandcamp in the description to the podcast, and I may well be having these gentlemen on the show at some point in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. Right now, friends, if you spend your time on Facebook groups discussing whether or not a band is quote-unquote sus because their frontman has a Destroyer 666 patch on his battle vest, then it's time for you to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, my friends, we kick off on metalstorm.net as always. We could start off by reading about the fantastic new track debuted by the band The Dead Daisies, but the singer looks a little bit like Blackie Lawless with an eating disorder, so I'm going to give that one a miss. I am going to move on to Possessed, who have revealed a lyric video for a song that came out nearly 5 years ago, which I find bizarre. However, I am in the mood to hear the song. So it says here, legendary 80s thrash death metal icons Possessed share a new lyric video for Ritual, the track taken from their 2019 album Revelations of Oblivion. It's been a while since I've listened to that album, but I do have fond memories of it. I enjoyed it when it came out. It's just not necessarily been one that has stuck with me for a lengthy period of time. Regardless, let's hear what Ritual sounds like. And I think those memories were well-founded. I still enjoy the song. Great riff, sick vocals, lyrics maybe a little bit on the hokey side, but that doesn't really bother me all that much. It is not either Seven Churches or Beyond the Gates, but it is still very, very good. And that was a really great comeback record. So I'm still curious as to why they're releasing the lyric video for this now. I don't know whether there's something new in the works, or whether they just want to remind people that the band haven't broken up. But either way, cool album. If you haven't checked it out yet, make sure that you do. I've traded messages with Jeff Becerra on Twitter, actually, about him coming on the podcast, but no further conversations beyond just a kind of initial Twitter exchange. So will it happen? Won't it happen? I don't know. I'll see if I can do it. I think it'd be a lot of fun to have him on the show if it could happen. By the way, speaking of Beyond the Gates, a lot of social media posts by friends and associates from Beyond the Gates in Bergen this weekend. Gotta admit, I was a bit jealous. So I think next year I'm definitely going to make a point of going. It looked fucking awesome. That Bathory tribute that they had, that looked great. Stericon played. You had, who else played? I know Traldom played, although not as much excitement for the new Traldom as what there may have been a month ago. And my understanding from a couple of people that were there was that they didn't really play any old stuff. They all just played new music. So Yeah, that it was interesting. There was a very muted response for that on the socials. But regardless, I think I will be making a appearance at Beyond the Gates next year, and I've already got my hotel booked for Inferno. That that bill is starting to look tastier and tastier, and then the bill to end all bills, Fortress next year. If you're anywhere in the UK, or if you have the ability to travel to the UK, I think that is not one that you're going to want to miss. I mean, Ecclese, Ulcerate, Ream, those three alone are worth the price of admission. And then this week they've just announced Abduction as well. So yeah, it's looking really, really, really good. And I had a great time at Fortress this year. Like I said, Scarborough is a nice place. There was a good crowd there, and hopefully Ecclese's presence will will send some of the undesirables packing. Anyway, let's move on to another new single. The band is Concrete Winds. The archdeacon of the Necrosphere, Brother Marco, was nagging at me almost daily to check out this song. I'm very glad that I did, so I've already heard this, but I think you guys need to hear it too. It says here, the Finnish death noise squadron Concrete Winds strike back with their second single, Subterranean Persuasion, from their soon-to-be-released self-titled record. Marco had a specific description for the song that I think is very apt. I'll share it after we've listened to the first 60 seconds. But what I will say is, tighten up your panties, because this is fucking hard as shit. So Marco described this as being more Morbid Angel than Morbid Angel has been for at least the last 3 albums, and I tend to agree. That opening riff is just pure Trey Azathoth worship, and then it just goes into something that is just fucking altogether gnarly, mean, menacing. I didn't really know this band up until the point that I heard this single, but they do have 2 albums out previously. Primitive Force, that they put out back in 2019, that got 91% on Metal Archives, and then Nerve Butcherer, that came out in 2021, that got 83%. This to me sounds fucking excellent, and I would actually say, in keeping with the Morbid Angel comparison, maybe this is kind of the direction that Morbid Angel should have gone into on Illud. If they were going to do something a little differently on that record, bring in some of those electronic or industrial influences, like this was the way that they could have done it, and, still retain some semblance of self-respect. I have a lot of love for Morbid Angel, as you know, but we all know that album was fucking absolute trash, and anyone that says otherwise is lying to themselves. There's just no, it's one thing to have an opinion on that record. There can be no debate. It's trash. Concrete Winds, however, not trash. This definitely gets a thumbs up. Everything here is working. The production sounds great. The riff sounds fucking sick. The vocals are twisted and mean and vile. Drumming sounds awesome. Just every single thing about this is top notch. And this album, by the way, is entitled Concrete Winds. It's going to be dropping on August the 30th, courtesy of Sepulchral Voice Records, which Sepulchral Voice Records is an interesting choice of label for this band, but then, maybe not. They do have some really, really good stuff on their label, but mostly black metal or Grave Miasma style death metal. I believe Grave Miasma is on the label too. But yeah, this isn't the style of music you'd necessarily expect from them, but either way, whoever signed it, kudos to them. I love this. Absolutely love it. Let's listen to 60 seconds more. Brilliant stuff. Speaking of brilliant stuff, this weekend I finally got to watch Maxine. You will know, if you follow the news rant, that I've been very, very excited about that movie. First thing I'd say is superior to Longlegs in every possible way. Mia Goth's acting, absolutely sensational, as was the case on Pearl, as was the case on X. Ty West's directing, stellar. You could make the argument that he's perhaps a little too in love with the era in which the movie is set, which is kind of the mid-'80s. But I think in terms of a movie that captures the feel of 80s slashers, the 80s satanic panic, I don't think there's a movie that's come out for at least a decade that does it as well as this movie does. And then you've got a pretty star-studded cast for the rest of it. As much as quite a few of the actors don't necessarily spend as much time on screen as the trailer would suggest, you do have Kevin Bacon. You've got Giancarlo Esposito, also known as Gustavo Fring, one of the greatest villains in all of television history. You've got Michelle Monaghan. You've got a couple of serious heavy hitters. Bobby Cannavale is part of the cast, and they're all great. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie, absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it, and the fact that Paige, who doesn't like horrors, liked it too, kind of tells you something. I wouldn't say it's not particularly scary. I wouldn't necessarily even call it a horror as much as it's a period slasher. But I would strongly recommend you check it out if you haven't seen it yet. Didn't get to see it at the cinema. I watched it on the home theater, which recently got a little upgrade, nothing massive. But I just swapped out 2 of my side surround speakers for something a little bigger and beefier. So the sound stage overall is going to sound a bit bigger and a bit meaner. But either way, if you can check it out at the theater, definitely do. Otherwise, make sure you check it out. It's on the streaming. I think it's on some of the streaming platforms now. It might be Hulu. I may have procured it otherwise. But that's just because in the UK, they're a couple of weeks behind when it comes to releasing stuff on the streaming sites. Anyway, let's move on. Abramelin have got a 4th long player on the way. Australian death metal pioneers Abramelin proudly present their new single, Conflagration of the Dreamers, taken from their upcoming 4th full-length effort, Sins of the Father, out on October the 4th via Hammerheart Records. Of course, anybody who's anyone should know that Abramelin features friends of Into the Necrosphere, Matt Wilcock, as well as the great Dave Haley. The last Abramelin album I thought was fucking brilliant. That was called Never Enough Snuff, came out in 2020. Anything that features Matt Wilcock and Dave Haley tends to be on the to the furthest possible side on the spectrum of shit to brilliant. And I've had this album, I will also confess, for probably about 9 months, so I know what it sounds like. I think you guys are going to absolutely love this, and you're about to find out why. Let's listen to this new single. I did tell you we're going to like it. I think this is the sort of record where if anyone listened to the new 6 Feet Under album and said, yeah, this is awesome, this is kind of the reality check you need. Like, Abramelin is a band that sets the standard, sets the benchmark, and 6 Feet Under certainly the new 6 Feet Under record falls gravely short of it. It says here in the article, vocalist Simon Dower comments, Conflagration of the Dreamers is the first track to be taken from our forthcoming album. We chose this track not only because it totally shreds, but it's also a great indicator of what's to come on the rest of the new Dead Set ripping compositions. A brutal, thrashy death metal affair that combines the groove that Abramelin is known for, but also hints at our new sound and direction. Lyrically, Conflagration of the Dreamers is a follow-up to Flesh Furnace from our Dead Speak album that was released back in 2000. It brings us up to speed with this murderous pyro and his propensity for setting his sleeping victims on fire, thus the name of the track. That album cover looks really, really grim. Simon Dower sounds like he's gargling bits of broken beer bottles. And then, of course, between Rob Mollica and Matt Wilcock, the guitars sound wicked, and Dave Haley, one of the best drummers on the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, just absolutely top-notch. By the way, correction, I will correct myself in real time. Rob Mollica plays bass for them now. Joe Haley of, formerly of the Amendment, but long-time man of Psychroptic, and also Dave Haley's brother. He plays guitar for them now. So, I mean, you've got the elite of Australian extreme metal in this band. How could they not sound anything other than fantastic? Let's give this another 60 seconds. Fucking brilliant. By the way, I had a couple of comments last week about folks that stuck around to the very end of the podcast and heard that Belligerent Intent song that I played. That album, if you gave that a miss, you seriously need to dig it up. In some ways, I would almost describe it as a bit of a proto-Werewolves record, but it's a band that Matt Wilcock was in, for those that don't know, prior to Werewolves getting kicked off, and they put out an album back in 2016, I believe it was, called The Crucifier. Fucking phenomenal. The whole album from start to finish, absolutely brilliant. There's a bit of Vital Remains worship on there as well, so if you liked De-Christianize and Icons of Evil, Matt is definitely working out some of his love for those two records on that particular album, but really an underloved, underappreciated gem, in my opinion. Okay, let's move on. Warlust have revealed a new track. It says, Between Hyperion and Plague serves as the second single off the Warlust's forthcoming third full-length album, Sol Invictus in Umbra Satana, which comes out on September the 27th. No idea what Warlust sounds like, but I, as many of you, will find out right now. very generic. I don't want to be too harsh on these guys because I'm conscious there's maybe a little bit of recency bias. I've just listened to Abramelin, which was superb, and also listened to Concrete Winds before that, which was also excellent. This just sounds very, it sounds very mid, as the youth would say. It's back when I was in school, I knew a couple of guys that would write this semi-new wave of British heavy metal influenced black metal style of music. And broadly speaking, I thought that they were complete and utter dickheads. They were the kind of guys who would drunkenly, phone girls and play songs on the phone to them, or write rewrite lyrics from a band and then claim it's their own poetry, and various stupid things like that. Losers, and this is the kind of music that they used to make in the pathetic excuse of a band that they were in. Maybe that's why I don't like it, but I can see it having its audience. That audience is not going to include me. Realistically, you've got like 5-6 hours a day to listen to music, and that's reasonably speaking maybe 8-9 albums. If I had to choose 8-9 albums to listen to over anything by Warlust, I can pretty quickly come up with a reasonable list. Before I have to go down that path. All right, Cold Brand have put out a new single. It says here, Cold Brand have unleashed Fortarer of Minne och Forum. Apologies to everybody in Norway who has been once again offended by my butchery of their language. The second advanced single, it says here, to come off their oncoming studio album, Ingen Skonsel. The latter drops on August the 23rd through Dark Essence Records. Think I liked the previous song that they released. I'm not as giddy with excitement as others that I know about Cold Brand coming back. But that being said, let's give this a whirl. Big thumbs up for me. I'm going to have to remind myself what that previous single sounded like, but I don't recall being as impressed with that as I am with this song. This is excellent. Very typical Norwegian melodies, but executed to a turn. And you've got some serious heavy hitters in this band. Leonid Melnikov, drummer for the band Flesh Meadow, who I played a couple of weeks ago, to some critical acclaim. And you also have Monovont, who is the current vocalist for Craft. So I think installed in that role as of this year. But by the way, it probably goes without saying, the last Craft record, White Noise and Black Metal, masterpiece. Absolute fucking masterpiece. But yeah, I would definitely suggest you check that out. Just as a side note, if you've slept on it, missed it, haven't listened to it for a while. But yeah, Cold Brand hitting it out of the park, I think, with this. It feels to me like Norwegian black metal, and I have mentioned this before, but it really feels to me like things are stirring in Norway in ways that they haven't stirred for a while. Like, you could feel a real energy and a real excitement at Inferno as well. And I spoke to a couple of Norwegian folk that were there, and like, even they were saying like it feels a bit more alive, the scene, than what it had felt for a while. I mean, like, I remember when, bullshit like Kvelertak was being pushed out as, the new wave of, Norwegian heavy music. And it's like, well, I don't want to hear this garbage coming out of Norway. I want shit that's blasting and grim and mean, nasty sounding. This definitely meets that brief. So, yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Thumbs up from me. Marilyn Manson have dropped a new single, or has dropped a new single. I listened to the single. I'm not going to inflict it on you. I think it's complete and utter trash. Of course, the internet is melting down over the fact that he has all this controversy swirling around him. The shock horror of Marilyn Manson having some strange sexual proclivities. And I'm not victim blaming by saying that, but, the fact that this dude had rumors swirling around him for years, and all of a sudden now everyone is acting surprised that there was some weird shit going on behind closed doors. That being said, I can separate the art from the artist. The song just doesn't do it for me. I think the last really good Marilyn Manson album was... I can't even recall what the album was called. Hollywood, I think. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. That was a decent record. It had a song called God Eat God, I think right at the beginning of the album, which is fucking excellent. But beyond that, not all that great. I saw some clips of him live posted all over the socials over the weekend as well. And it sounded mucky muck, I've got to say. I mean, his voice just... it's not what it once was. I think the only thing about it that was cool was the fact that the stage looked, the stage had quite a cool setup, nice lights, some, thin LED upside down crosses that looked pretty good, but the rest of it, not so much. On to something that is much more exciting, in my opinion. Opeth has announced their new studio album, and what makes this exciting has been the buzz floating all over the internets that Michael Ackerfeld is actually growling again. So it says here, on October the 11th, 2024, Opeth will release their new studio album dubbed The Last Will and Testament, the successor to 2019's Incorda Venenum. Was recorded at Rockfield Studios in Monmouthshire, Wales, with additional recordings at Hammerthorpe Studios, Flow Creation Studios, and the Tower Studios. Mixed at Atlantis and Hammerthorpe in Stockholm, Sweden, mastered at Abbey Road Studios in London, England. Pre-orders available by heading over here. They give the link. You can listen to the first single, the album's opening track, Down Under. Concurrently, the Swedes have also confirmed a first set of European 2025 shows supported by Grand Magus. My love for Opeth stretches all the way back to discovering them on Morning Rise. Then I got Orchid, fantastic album as well. Then I felt like they really stepped it up with My Arms, Your Hearse, Still Life, and Blackwater Park. Probably, in my opinion, the greatest 3 records in their discography. Deliverance and Damnation I was less interested in. Ghost Reveries was good. Watershed I thought was pretty good as well. Things started to go south with Heritage, but briefly they kind of, they pulled me back with Pale Communion. Like Pale Communion, the obsession with 1970s prog rock was already, really in your face. But for whatever reason, they just managed to execute it well with Pale Communion, and then Sorceress and Incorda Venenum, both disasters in my opinion. Disasters enough that I just wasn't interested in hearing anything else by this band. However, I don't think I've seen a single comment about this where people aren't absolutely wetting themselves, frothing at the loins with exhilaration. So let us hear what this track sounds like. This is in terms of the runtime of the record, or the sequencing of the record, I should say. This is the first track. The radio edit, I'm just checking out the track listing. Everything seems to kind of be like, I don't know what that fucking symbol even would be. I'm assuming chapter 1, chapter 2, all the way to chapter 7, and then A Story Never Told is the final song. Yeah, anyway, I'm gonna stop talking shit. Let's hear what this sounds like. I saved myself for you guys. I didn't listen to the song specifically so that this could be the first time that when I do the news rant, it'll be the first time I hear it. You get a fresh reaction from me. That's fucking excellent. That opening, they're still down with the prog. There's no doubt about that. Fortunately, we're not inflicted with the sound of a fucking Hammond organ and all the other tripe that they used to include on the previous records. But then when that singing kicks in, the clean singing at the start, it kind of reminds me a little bit of Tomahawk, the Mike Patton band. It's just got that slightly avant-garde sound to it. And I would argue there's these moments where if I close my eyes, I could almost mistake Michael Ackerfeld for Mike Patton. No bad thing, although their voices are quite distinct from each other. But, Mike Patton, to me, one of the greatest vocalists ever. Michael Ackerfeld, also one of the greatest vocalists ever. Then he kicks in with those growls, and my God, does it sound fucking fantastic. I mean, he has such a great death metal growl in any case. Like, even if you're not a fan of Opeth, just go back and check out the Bloodbath albums that he was on. Great example, maybe we'll listen to it straight after this, Like Fire, off, I think it's on Resurrection Through Carnage. But yeah, I mean, he is, when he's on song with the growls, he is one of the masters. But yeah, this to me is really good. What a fucking comeback by this band. Because this will catapult them way back up to, being amongst the upper echelon bands, or the upper tier of bands that I love. After really kind of writing them off and just feeling like, they had gone in a direction where they'd sort of passed me by and I just wasn't interested in them. Yeah, I am very, very, very excited about what this whole thing is going to sound like. Let's give it another 60 seconds, folks. So we're heading back into some of that sorceress type territory. Some mucking about. I've got to say, even when they muck about, I'm not hating it anywhere near as much as I hated the last two records. It just sounds like it's executed well. You add enough contrast with a heavy part to make it tolerable. And I'm interested to hear how they implement it on the rest of the record. What's also interesting is that this is the first record that Opeth will be putting out for Reigning Phoenix Music. They put out Sorceress and Incado Venom on their own label. I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it by suggesting that perhaps somebody over at Reigning Phoenix had a conversation with them and said, look, you can do your 70s, you can do your Yes tribute shit, but you better make it plenty heavy if you do. But either way, not sure if I'm going to give that a top notch, but I will give it a thumbs up. I like it. Now, I did say, let's hear what that Bloodbath track sounds like, and I'm going to play it for y'all. Let's find it. This is just fucking genius. And it is on Resurrection Through Carnage. I was correct. So let me just give you, let's just listen to kind of 60, 70 seconds of this. But should you need a reminder of its genius, I just thought I would let you hear it. Fucking phenomenal. Of course, Michael's no longer in the band. We've got Nick Holmes from Paradise Lost in the booth now. But yeah, very, very good all the same. Behemoth will be embarking on the Unholy Trinity Tour. It says here, Poland's black death metal titans, Behemoth, proudly announced the Unholy Trinity Tour, featuring massive support in two legendary black metal bands, Satyricon and Rotting Christ. Good for Satyricon and Rotting Christ. I certainly hope Satyricon are going to get their acts together and deliver a record that is a substantial improvement over Deep Calleth Upon Deep, Rotting Christ, good stuff. But yeah, and Behemoth, shite. If you want to hear my an expanded brain dump from both myself and Jerry, then make sure you tune in next week, because Ruta and I had a lot to say about both Satyricon and Behemoth. That dude can talk, by the way. And I mean it in a very nice way. I asked him probably 5 questions over the course of a 2-hour conversation. You kind of set him on his way, and he just goes hell for leather. But yeah, what a fucking great dude. And that I kind of feel like that episode was long overdue. I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy it. All right, Undeath, third studio album detailed. For whatever reason, I was thinking of Undeath when we were listening to that Abramelin song, thinking I am sure I'd seen something about a new Undeath record coming out. It says here, the Rochester, New York death metal band Undeath will put out their third album, More Insane, on October the 4th via Prosthetic Records, engineered, produced, mixed, and mastered by Mark Lewis. The album's lead single and music video, Brandish the Blade, is out now. Enjoyed the previous Undeath record. Of course, I had Alexander Jones of Undeath on the podcast as well. Very nice guy. Kind of felt like this band should have been a lot bigger than they ended up being. Like, I thought there was a lot of momentum and a lot of hype behind It's Time to Rise from the Grave, their previous record. And not all of it necessarily materialized into, an increase in their profile. Maybe I misread that, and I'm just not close enough to the front line, close enough to the metallic coal face to know for sure just how big they are. But I just feel like it felt to me like they were going to be a bigger band post that record than they've ended up being. That being said, More Insane is certainly a creative title for an album. Let's hear what Brandish the Blade sounds like.
It's called Brandish the Blade. Man, Brownie, let's go, brother.
There's something lacking here. And I can't put my finger on whether it's menace, whether it's something... like, you listen to those old death metal records, and I've spoken about it to a lot of people that have been on this podcast. There's that danger, that real kind of sense of the unknown. This just feels to me like I've heard it 1,000 times before, and I've heard it done better previously. It's not a terrible song. It's just not anything that's grabbing me. And actually, It's Time to Rise from the Grave had, it had more of a sense of unease about it, more of that tension in the music than I'm feeling here. Like, this just feels like happy people trying to make heavy music. And not to suggest that you need to be a miserable bastard in order to produce something that is, believably brutal and believably savage. But I don't know. I'm struggling to completely articulate what it is I'm not feeling about this, but it's not landing for me. It's not landing on fertile soil. So we move on. Oranssi Pazuzu reveal upcoming albums details. Oranssi Pazuzu have unveiled details and a new single as part of their next full-length offering, Montutuja. Again, apologies to everyone in Finland because I fucked that language up too. The latter is ready to land in stores on October the 11th, 2024. I think we have listened to the song, and I know they've put out a different single. We might pick that up on Metal Injection or Blabbermouth when we head over there. But this song sounds fucking excellent. I'll tell you what it reminds me of a little bit. Death Grips. It's like Death Grips goes black metal. And Death Grips, in my opinion, not a band that always hit it out of the park, but fuck me, when they're on song, they are on song. I've seen them live quite a few times. The first time I ever saw Death Grips live was when their ex-military mixtape had just come out. And I saw them in this abandoned warehouse in Shoreditch in London. No stage production, no nothing. They just had like literally one... It looked like a table lamp that was behind the band on stage. And it was fucking masterful. Then I saw them play at the Electric Ballroom in Camden. Not so good. I saw them play at the Brixton Academy a couple of years later, and that was incredible. Absolutely amazing. That is a side note. That is a detour. I definitely feel like the folks in Oranssi Pazuzu they've been listening to different stuff than, just Mayhem and Emperor. And the music is better for it. So I'm very, very excited about this record. Not going to listen to the song because, like I said, we may very well get to it later on. But or the new single, I should say, we may get to that later on. But that is this record's very, very high up on my list of most anticipated for the remainder of 2024. Groza have launched a new song and video. It says your black metal formation Groza are premiering Daffodils, featuring the absolutely atrociously named Harakiri for the Sky and Karg. Another new single from their upcoming Nadir album. The accompanying music video was produced and directed by Tim Honker Ziles. Let's hear what it sounds like. All right, so far the entire intro truly lives up to the title of the of the song, Daffodils. It sounds like it was written by people that, you know, wrote fake letters to get out of high school gym class. I've jumped to the midpoint of the song, so the song is about 10 minutes long. I've jumped to the 5 minute 14 seconds mark of the track. Hopefully by this point some form of something has kicked in, because that opening minute was excruciating. Fuck this. No, I'm afraid that is a fucking hard pass. I should have known. There were a couple of true posers on the socials that have been raving about it, and generally speaking, whenever they say something is good, I know that it's going to be terrible, and this just proved it. I shan't name names, but I was about to say they know they are. They definitely don't listen to this podcast. Okay, one more song on Metal Storm, and then we'll move over to the Democrats Guide to Rock Music. Grave Noir have debuted Ordo Opera Cultura track. It says here, black metal unit Grave Noir emerge from the shadows yet again with their potent new single, Ordo Opera Cultura. This haunting new anthem is but a glimpse into the mystical and uncompromising spirit of their forthcoming debut album, Devant Le Port des Etoiles, due on August the 23rd via Season of Mist. Season of Mist, of course, according to the idiots over on the Facebook group Fash. Is it Fash, the musical? Season of Mist is one of the most suspect or sus of all record labels. That being said, don't give a fuck. I am very excited to hear what Grave Noir sounds like, so let's spin this right now. That is a massive step up from Groza being the biggest load of fucking wank I've heard in a long time. This band features, again, some pretty heavyweight talent. Two former members of Hergol. Hergol is superb. as well as a former member of Seth, and the new Seth album is also excellent. Also, note to the IOC, if you're looking for a band to soundtrack the closing ceremony of that glorified high school athletics meet known as the Olympic Games, then maybe Grave Noir is your band. And again, apologies to the French people for how I butchered their language when I read that album title. But yeah, very good. Very, very good. Like a loving tribute to 90s black metal with French, delivered with French flair. That's the best way that I'll describe them. But I really like that. Definite thumbs up for me. I upgrade my thumbs up to a top notch. That is fucking excellent. Absolutely superb. Okay, let's move on to Blabbermouth and have a quick gander at what they've got going here. See Pantera perform at Gillette Stadium as support act for Metallica. Fan-filmed video of Pantera's August the 2nd performance at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts, as the support act for Metallica can be seen below. Prior to launching a 5-date UK Ireland run in February 2025, the reformed Pantera, consisting of classic lineup members Phil Anselmo and Rex Brown, along with Zach Wilde and Charlie Bedante, will kick off a European tour, blah, blah, blah. We've seen video from this reunion. Some of it has been excellent, some of it less than excellent. We've got a choice here of Strength Beyond Strength, This Love, and Walk. Let's hear what Walk sounds like.
Sing with your fucking fist, you hear me? Hey, Zach! Play the riff.
That is a solid 4 out of 10 performance. I think Phil sounds okay. He's helped by the fact that the audience is singing along with him. But, you know, I have made this observation about this reunion before. That groove, that partnership, being in lockstep with each other that the brothers Abbott had, it's just missing here. I think Charlie's drumming on that video isn't good. You know, Zach sounds all right. But there's just something there that sounds laborious. So laborious and trudging is how that sounds to me. Anyway, all right, let's see what else we've got here. James Hetfield sings high-pitched version of Metallica's Enter Sandman with the help of helium. We'll give that one a skip. Anthrax's Joey Belladonna declares, I love classic rock. Ex-Slipknot drummer Jay Weinberg shares drum cam performance of his Barcelona performance with Bruce Springsteen. Another yawn. Drummer Jason Bittner exits Overkill. Yeah, nothing really of any note here. So let's head over to Metal Injection and see what they've got going, what they've got cooking. We've got Gojira's Joe Duplantier to take part in a peaceful protest against Paul Watson's arrest. Then we've got Oranssi Pazuzu's new single and video, Velotus. And Metal Injection calls it the stuff of nightmares, which automatically suggests it's going to be excellent. Now, I did talk about Oranssi Pazuzu earlier, about the fact that the new album is coming. Let's hear what this new single sounds like. Right, so we've got a hooded figure skulking around on the rocks at the beach, and a song that's nearly 8 minutes long. I have a suspicion we're going to need to skip ahead by 2 minutes or so just to get over the worst of the intro, which isn't necessarily going to translate well if you're busy listening to this on your headphones. So I'm jumping to 2 minutes in. Let's see where we're up to with this one. It sounds like shit is starting to pick up. Let's skip ahead by another minute. We head to the 3 minute mark, and hopefully by this point the song has actually kicked off properly. Song is every bit as great as I thought it would be. That music video fucking rules. Kind of has a bit of an Alien vibe to it, and it also reminds me that Alien Romulus is looking very, very good indeed. I'm very excited about that movie. But yeah, this is looking excellent. This sounds fucking cool. I go back to my original statement. This is without a doubt one of the albums I'm looking forward to most for the remainder of this year. Lamb of God's producer recalls the struggle of adding choruses to Ashes of the Wake, a record that harks back to the halcyon era of Lamb of God. I mean, you know, I can say what I want about Randy Blythe and, you know, the fact that not the biggest fan of him, and definitely not a fan of the most recent Lamb of God album, but Ashes of the Wake, man, what a masterpiece. Just a completely perfect take on modern metal. Aggressive, nasty, memorable. Yeah, I just absolutely love that album, and it's an album I can still dig into, you know, whenever the situation calls for it, and just love it. All right, let's see if there's anything else for us to wrap up on. Kerry King explains why Phil Anselmo wasn't right for his solo band. Kerry King began teasing his solo project all the way back in 2020. The article reads, rumors swirled about who would be a part of the band, with Pantera vocalist Phil Anselmo being a name that would constantly pop up. Death Angel vocalist Mark Ozagueda ultimately took the microphone and is clearly crushing it based on all the live footage that's been surfacing. So was there any truth to Anselmo being in King's band? According to King in an interview with Glide magazine, not really. Kerry King goes on to say, well, the Phil connection that was loved by all the suits, and by suits I mean the booking agents, the promoters, and my manager, because they all see dollar signs. And you know, I'm not upset with that. That's what they get paid to do, but I told them all along, I'm like, Phil's not the guy. I said, I've got the guy, and they fought me tooth and nail all the way through. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm in charge. We had conversations with Phil, he continues, but it never even got to a point where we played in a room together. He was dragging his feet for a long time because I don't really think he wanted to do it. And he got some music, and I think he realized it was probably too thrashy for him with his style these days. So, you know, the Pantera thing came round and that just flew right out the door. Never thought of it again. It would have been super interesting to hear what those two would do together in a project, I think. But equally, I do agree with the style of the Kerry King solo album, a style I'm not a particular fan of. I don't think Phil would have been a good fit. I do think Mark sounds really, really, he sounds as good as you're going to get somebody to sound in Proto Slayer, which is what the solo project is. Definitely not a record that's going to make it on my top 30 of 2024, I don't think. I can maybe see why some people like it, but to me, it's just it's a continuation of the disappointment that basically followed Slayer from Diabolus in Musica onwards. They didn't do anything after that was of any real interest to me. My friends, I believe we have come to the end of another news rant. And that also means that chapter 236 of the ongoing Into the Necrosphere saga is in the books. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode as much as I did recording it. I will be back next week with my good friend Jerry of Ruta and also of the band Nightside. That new Nightside record, Death from the North, is one we will discuss next week and one you need to lay your little ears on. In the meantime, my friends, whatever it is that you are doing, wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.